It's kind of the way of our trade, feast and famine.
The plant employs about 1,100 people. Half of them, 550, will be laid off starting November 4th.
Yeah, it's kind of, a little bit of a disappointment that we're doing so good now that we're all going to be bumped around, moved around.
Jobs are drying up because the work is. Two big projects, building rail cars for Metrolinx and streetcars for Toronto, will finish by next year. Add to that, Bombardier says, the Buy American policies in the U.S. force the plant to rely mostly on Canadian orders.
We need some contracts signed quickly.
But time is now an issue. Bombardier says even once a contract is signed, it can take a year or more to ramp up production.
I hope that, they can hang on to as many people as long as they can.
Now, the federal Liberals and Ontario's Conservative Premier are trading barbs and accusations about the layoffs. As David Cochrane tells us, with a federal election looming, this kind of sniping is likely to get even more direct.
The premiers say they're in Saskatoon primarily to talk trade, but politics has a way of seeping in.
We aren't here to play politics like the federal government.
But that's exactly what's happening as Ontario and Ottawa blame each other for job losses at Bombardier.
They have done absolutely nothing to support these people in Thunder Bay.
It's a political blame game with hundreds of workers stuck in the middle. Ford says Ottawa has been slow to back his big money transit plan that would see the Thunder Bay plant building even more streetcars for Toronto.
To hear the Premier of Ontario misleading Ontarians and, in fact, employees, 550 employees of Thunder Bay with such empty words.
Ford did announce his transit plan.
We are here today to announce a $28.5 billion expansion to our province's transit network.
But hasn't sent Ottawa anything to sign.
There's been no application received at the federal government for concrete details about what they propose to do in terms of moving forward on transit in Toronto. There's been nothing but chaos, confusion, and paralyzation, quite frankly.
It's all politics at this point.
Not true, says Ontario's development minister, who insists transit projects in Vancouver and Montreal, where the Prime Minister personally made the announcement,
the federal government will be investing $1.3 billion.
Were fast-tracked.
It's just absolutely unfair, and it's just categorically wrong. Again, in Montreal and Vancouver, they were held to a very different and very low standard to get their billions of dollars approved instantly.
None of this solves the job problem in Thunder Bay or transit problems in Toronto, which has some suggesting both sides should just knock it off.
We need transit vehicles. People in Thunder Bay need jobs. The other two governments have money to help us buy the transit vehicles, and surely we can all sit down together and see if we can work out something.
So, David, Ottawa made Doug Ford the target today and not Bombardier. Give us a sense of what's behind that strategy.
Yeah, Rosie, this is all about the federal election. I mean, Doug Ford's numbers have absolutely tanked just 1 year into office, and he's dragging down the federal Conservatives with him in a lot of key Ontario ridings that are going to determine this next federal election. So the Liberals think the more they can keep the spotlight on Doug Ford, the better that is for them on Election Day, which, Rosie, tonight is 103 days away.
And how do the Conservatives counter the Liberal offensive, David?
Well, Doug Ford has taken steps to avoid being a target. He's closed the Ontario legislature early. He's going to keep it closed until after Canadians vote in the fall. And he says he's going to keep a low profile in the federal campaign. That's his plan. That is not the Liberals' plan. They're going to do everything they can to try to keep him front and center.
Okay, that's David Cochrane in Saskatoon tonight. Thanks, David.
You're welcome.